All right, welcome to another episode from the Chart Readers. It's been forever since I've said that. Feels like forever since I've recorded. Feels great to be back. So I want to cover SoundHound and SOFI, and then I really want to at least take a good quick look at SPY and QQQ. Again, the ETF versions of Nasdaq and the S&P 500 itself, right? So interesting day on the indices, and I think I actually really want to start there. All right, QQQ was looking good. You can see the top of the wick was really close to the 200. Actually, Friday's candle had a wick really close to the 200. The hourly chart, you can see it was good most of the day until the last hour. All right, and it's not like the RSI indicator was anything crazy, right? But we were doing well, and dropped, right? You can see it in the 15-minute too. It just tanks from 3 to 4, and before that 3 to 4 hour, right? It was just nice, right? Don't get me wrong, there was definitely a gap down on Friday, so like maybe I'm just being a little cavalier on that. Like, yeah, it was a good day, but we for sure gapped down, and that's not a beautiful thing, right? But I think I would have been okay with this nice attempted recovery. And then just look at that, right? Maybe this is the chart that mattered. You can see, but the RSI was really only at 78 when I click right there, right? So it's not like it was pushing 80 or 90. So interesting 15-minute there. And again, SPY identical. It was a beautiful day. That 3 to 4 hour drop, you can see it. Obviously, it's going to be the same on the hourly, right? But good, and then bad. And the real concern is we might be dropping back to 555 if we see some bad things start tomorrow, right? So kind of keep that in your back pocket. And really, that 555 is basically on the daily as well. So I think I mentioned that number today, if I'm not mistaken. Look, as long as SPY, that was this morning, as long as SPY doesn't lose 555, everything's okay. I really am not a fan of the fact that I just said, like, look at this thing, right? Even this, at least this is calling 560 before the 550, right? So look, keep that in your back pocket. It's obviously been on the SPY a nice chart, right? We had a little bit of a scare. We've made a really nice recovery since the 7th right there, right? When you look at QQQ, same story. We've had a nice little recovery right there, right? When you look at the weekly, we never really got to the 200s, right? So that's a good thing right there. But that daily uncertainty, I think, is something that we're going to hold in our back pocket as we start to shift focus to the tickers themselves, right? So looking at SoundHound, sorry, I zoomed in just a little too much. I love this channel right here. And you can see my manual drawn line is pretty much identical to the 100 moving average, right? If I click right there, you can see the 100 moving average is sitting at 1260 basically, and my line is basically at 1260, right? So 3 cents down, 2 cents up, basically same thing in my head, right? So get me out of this cluster, and man, that's a beautiful channel right there, right? But you hear me say it all the time, it's difficult to escape a bunch of moving averages. I obviously drew this line, and you know, it's nice to see that this line is lining up, but you know I care about moving averages, right? So that's definitely what I'm going to be looking at. When I look at SOFI, you know, again, I think it's that same story I just said on QQQ and SPY. It's been a really nice recovery since the 7th. And truth be told, I will say that this actually held up better. When you look at the 15-minute chart, it also didn't have a good, you know, end of the day hour, right? But overall, this is at least a little bit prettier. And hey, maybe there's a chance at 14. Let's just see what the day does, all right? I think the last thing to say is I don't know how accurate this is, but it looks like SOFI has earnings coming up, and it looks like SoundHound has earnings coming up. So obviously that'll dictate a lot. You know, I always think earnings is very 50-50, right? So cool. I think that's a real good opening thought right there. Real quick, what are we gonna do? Oh, I even forgot my intro thing. Hold on. So before we go any further and I give you more of my thoughts and opinions, what are we gonna do? Same thing we always do, right? We'll take a look at the daily and the weekly to see how these things are setting up short term. We have our 5 moving averages. There are horizontal support and resistance lines that I do draw manually myself. And then when we are done up here, we'll use the MACD, RSI, and volume as our lower indicators. Hey, really quickly, if you can, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video online with your friends. Comment good or bad if you disagree. Hey, anything you can do helps so much with these YouTube algorithms. But for real, just being here, giving me your time, oh, I'm so appreciative of it. So, real quick, before I even look at SoundHound, there's been a lot going on in the sector, right? You look at Palantir, this thing has been going, oh, it's dropping. Did they have earnings already? Hold on. Um, Hymns I saw. Oh, look at this. Okay, it dropped in this room already. I didn't even see it. Interesting. Okay, so it looks like revenue went up. It was originally, and when I say up, I mean guidance. Look, to me, guidance is super important. I love guidance so much, all right? And for them to raise the revenue like that, I actually really like that. I wish I knew what they were adjusting the income operations. I don't know if this is an up or down or not. This is obviously a big thing I see right here. I'm not a big fan of missing earnings per share. Now, this isn't a miss. They got the expected number, but you can see it's still yellow. Look, I think if we were talking about like BBAI, no offense, I would be real good with hitting it. Palantir is one that definitely needs to break it. So, yeah, this actually wasn't supposed to be a Palantir review, but maybe I'll start talking about Palantir a little bit actually. So, look, I was loving this setup. I was loving the fact that QQQ still was under several moving averages, right? SPY was still under several moving averages, but Palantir all of a sudden gets over all five, right? The fifth one's down there and just flies. This thing definitely had that recovery on the seventh, but substantially better to say the least, right? I think what's happening now is an interesting reaction to the earnings, and we're seeing what's going to happen with this eight moving average test right here, right? If we lose this 116 that we're basically sitting at, there's a real good chance that it drops to 100. You can obviously see I have a line right here at 110. Maybe that line will be okay, but again, if you lose the 8, you're going to go to the 20, right? So 116 is definitely going to be a real interesting number. I think the real big thing is this earnings per share. I don't know what Rule of 40 score is actually. I've actually never really heard of that. Um, what was your last hour on the regular? Let me just see. It actually wasn't even that bad. Wow, yeah, no, that's an interesting reaction to the earnings right now, right? So again, 116 is the number that needs to hold. Really what matters is getting back over 121. Obviously, everyone's going to focus on 124, and clearly that's an important number, right? You want to get over the highest candle, go back to all-time highs. But yeah, as long as you can get back over 121, I think I'm willing to say this was just an after-hours overreaction. I like that they increased the revenue. I don't know what I'm missing. Let's see if there's any thoughts? Um, it doesn't look bad. I agree on hymns. Is hymns dropping as well? Oh wow, yeah, hymns is dropping as well. Interesting. I'm wondering if those are both more of the market things than the earnings reactions, but nonetheless, I wanted to focus on Palantir at least, since that was the SoundHound connection, right? So that's a quick review of Palantir. I wanted to talk about BBAI really quickly as well. Look, this had a nice little run going, right? And I don't know if it really mirrored with SoundHound. Yeah, you can kind of say it mirrored. It had that same little thing, right? But BBAI was struggling to get over the 50 moving average, and that's basically the same thing I'm seeing on SoundHound right now, right? There's a little bit of an added extra something because of the 200 being right there, right? But yeah, there's a little interesting 50 moving average connection. Like I said, I really wasn't planning on talking about Palantir, but I didn't know earnings had just happened. So, um, and I also mentioned it in the opening thoughts. This system is saying SoundHound's earnings should be sometime right here. What day is that right there? Maybe the 8th. Let me know if you know correctly or not. But look, on the technical side, that's what you're here for, and let's get into that, right? What I'm really looking for is a break of all these moving averages so that we can go all the way up to the last moving average sitting right here, basically at 1260, right? I'm not here to brag about my manual drawn lines. What I really do care about is the fact that the moving average, even though this one's golden, and that generally means I'm a little more confident in it. Moving averages always matter, right? There is a good red here. That's a bit of a long horizontal, and I think to me it makes sense that we wicked at that $10 point twice, right? We wicked it right there, we wicked it right there. If you saw when I clicked, that's basically 50% of the biggest candle to the left right there, right? So makes sense to me that $10 is a difficult place. Honestly, it really wouldn't even hurt to wait for 10 to break and then take that to 1260, right? That is more than a 20% move right there, right? So that's again all going into this moving average cluster, earnings on the back end, and really it's that 50 moving average, right? So when we look at the weekly, what's your weekly? Yeah, look, the weekly also has that same signal. What is this thing sitting at? That's a 12 flat right there, right? So I think a $12 target is realistic if 10 breaks, and then we for sure don't want to lose 9. If we lose 9, it'll probably be a quick fall to 850, and then that'll be an important 850 test, because that same green could be a red, maybe back towards 760 on the low side, right? So I could see 760 on the low side, 1260 on the high side. I really like this thing over 10, all right? Cool. Let me know if you have any ideas about earnings, right? I don't know what the last earnings guidance was. I don't know if they've had any major deals or, any updates from previous deals that we've been looking for. But yeah, if good earnings can take us over, that could be a good thing. And then one more time, just in case you skipped over the opening thoughts, look, the daily on QQQ, which is exactly like NASDAQ, right? Let me just flash NASDAQ. I personally prefer it. NASDAQ had a good day. It was starting to look good, and then really the last hour just turned, right? On the 15-minute, it really was just a bad 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And look, I mean, it was trying to escape them and go, right? So what was a nice little setup right here just couldn't confirm and did poorly, right? There's no other word for it. So we do not want to come back to the 50 moving average. All right. If this starts heading down to 17,500, if QQQ, which is the mirror of it, right, starts heading down to 470-ish, oh, that's when I'm going to start getting worried. And that's really where I would start to assume that downside number on SOUN that I said. I'm clicking at 750 right now. I think I mentioned 760 not too long ago. All right. So a little bit of a Palantir inclusion in that. Hopefully you enjoyed that. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Let's take a look at SOFI. And, I think the first thing that jumps out to me when I look at the SOFI chart is it really did better than the indices did, right? And when I say that, I specifically mean that last hour, right? I think we'll see it in the 15-minute, right? So 3 to 4 wasn't a good hour. Clearly, there was a downtrend, right? Like we were up here at 13. We definitely ended down here at 1284. That's for sure not a pretty candle either, right? But I actually really like the fact that this thing has 2 good moving averages right here. And then a nice little, like when we were looking at SOUNDHOUND worried me on that 15-minute. I actually don't even know if I looked at this or not, right? But this thing on the 15-minute is under all 5. And like, that's a scary place to be, right? At least SOFI gives me some reason to think, okay, hopefully 1280 will be difficult to lose, and then right behind that is going to be 1270, right? So that's at least something to kind of consider, and really that's also echoed on this daily chart, right? Like it's there's some moving averages to be held here, and we're actually not even under the 8. We were actually able to hold the 8, right? So earlier today, I mentioned in the Discord, I thought there was a decent chance for this to want to test 14. Right, we have green, red. There's red, and green. There's a good little channel between down here and up here, right? Again, I think that, and I'll just show it, right? Because I did say it, 14. This was in the morning, right here. This was before that last scary hour on what was it called? On the indices, right? So I don't know how confident I feel about that 14 call anymore, in all honesty, but hey, the channel is there, right? This thing is over the 50 moving average. The same thing I just said that SOUNDHOUND was struggling on. Same thing with BBAI. Again, are these 3 comparable and the same? No, not necessarily, but moving averages are moving averages, and they're difficult, right? So to see it over that and not on that is at least some sort of like a little bit of confidence in my head, right? But I think that's going to be the high side. Like I said, 14. I would low side call it 12, basically in between the 50 and the 200 right there. Really, I love SOFI over 14. Obviously, that's going to put us over all the moving averages and whatnot, right? But I mentioned it and I had to zoom out to see it. It looks like earnings is a couple weeks away. Um, Get out of here. It looks like it's saying it's a month away. That seems a little extreme, actually. Let me know if you know when earnings is coming. Oh, maybe even this was earnings right here. Did earnings already happen? Sorry, my apologies. I see that there, and I think that's why it makes sense that July is going to be the next one. So, looks like earnings is what was unable to get us over that 14. Moving averages at least held it. We actually didn't even really lose the 8 during that, right? So, um, yeah, no, I think my thoughts stay. Sorry, I'm just kind of seeing it and thinking it out. But yeah, I think my thoughts stay right there. 14 high side, 12 low side. Really love this thing over 14. Just be careful one more time. That QQQ 15-minute chart is scary and makes it seem like it wants to drop there. That SPY 15-minute chart is identical to it. And when you look at the hour, actually the hour is a little scarier, right, on SPY and on QQQ, right? And look, I didn't really talk about it, but the SPY, sorry, SoFi is a little close to a bank, which is a little more Dow Jones. This one's at least over the 20, so hey, maybe there's a little bit of positive there, but yeah, that same hour just real tough right there across all three. That's the same scariness on that 15-minute chart right there, all right? So let me know your thoughts, let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Oh, I appreciate you so, so much.